Good evenings, precious saints of God. Thank you so very much for tuning in for another installment of our YouTube channel. We bless the Lord for these opportunities and just to share these nuggets with you as He shares them with me. Today, and before I go any further, it's Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that have tuned in and are getting a word. Today, we're going to start something new, and we'll do it for the next 2, maybe 3 weeks. And we're going to talk about something that God has started to deal with me very much about. And it's about assignments, having an assignment, knowing that God has given you an assignment. And one of the things God has spoken to me is that that word assignment is a very, very powerful word. We use it so nonchalantly, and we're so very flip at how we use it in local church because we don't understand the power and the magnitude of what it is for God to give us an assignment. And so for the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about assignments, and we're going to look at 3 aspects of an assignment. There are other aspects, but we're going to, as usual, do broad strokes. And so we're going to talk about 3 aspects of an assignment over the next few weeks that may help you to understand not only the assignment that you have, but more importantly, why you have that assignment and what it is God is trying to do in the earth realm and use you as the tool. Our assignments are what enable God to use us as a tool. The word assignment in the original Greek comes from the word nomos, the word nomos. And what nomos is something that impels or compels you to lift up a certain standard. It becomes a certain law. And when you look at it from that aspect, when God gives us assignment, what God made me to understand is He's giving us something. It's more than just merely something to do. What He's doing is He's establishing something in the earth realm, and He's using us to do it. Like I said, there are 3 broad aspects that we're going to look at. And the first aspect we're going to look at is that assignments have a cost factor. We're going to look at that for a little bit in just a few moments, but assignments have a cost factor. And the cost factor deals with what are you willing to sacrifice, or what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to pay to fulfill your assignment? The other thing we're going to look at on next week is that assignments are used to establish standards. In other words, when you fulfill, or as you're fulfilling your assignment, you're building a legacy. You're leaving a standard behind that others behind you can come along and use that same standard. You're forming a pattern, if you will, that God is setting up, and He's using you to do it. We'll look at that next week as we look at Father Abraham and how even to this day he established a pattern for being the father of many nations. Even Jesus used Abraham's pattern, but we will look at that next week. And finally, we will look at how assignments have their own unique opposition. And the reason being, it has its own unique opposition. I'm not necessarily talking about the things the devil will do. That's beside the point. He's weak anyway, and he can't stop us unless we allow him. But I'm talking about certain oppositions that deal with our inner struggles, that deal with the things we must master, that deal with the things we must learn how to control, that deal with the things that will teach us and take us to school and help us learn. They have their own unique opposition. They have their own unique processes. Everybody does not go through the same process because everybody is not given the same assignment. Everybody is not lifting up the same standard. Everybody is not being used to establish the same thing. But when we do, it places us in a position where we have our own unique opposition. Now, let's go back to our first point that we're going to make. And we're going to look at a passage of scripture that's very familiar when we talk about the cost factor of assignments. And we're going to look at Luke 14, verses 15 through 33. And in this particular parable, Jesus is teaching, and what he's showing us is the things that we must sacrifice in order to fulfill assignment. If we take on an assignment, there's a cost factor. Many times we don't look at that. We're so busy talking about what he gave us to do. We're not looking at the cost that's involved. We're not looking at those particular things that we must get up. In this passage of scripture, we see here Jesus is given a parable. And in this parable, he talks about how a certain man or a certain householder sent his servant to invite people to dinner. He had already prepared everything. He had already made sure that everything that they needed, that they would enjoy, was there. All he was requiring of them was to come. And so he sent his servant, and he told him to go out and tell them that what he had prepared for them was ready. Just come and enjoy. Something interesting happened. The servant went. He went to all of those who he chose to come and who he had invited to come to enjoy the feast. When he got to one said to him, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I just bought some land and I would come, but I can't come because I've got to get this land ready. I mean, I've got a plan. I've got things I got to do. I got to make it right. So I can't come because I've got to get my land ready. He had another one that began to talk about how he had bought 5 teams of oxen. And he said, they're brand spanking new, and I would come, but these oxen are so new, I've got to prove them. I've got to break them in, so I can't come. In other words, what these two were saying was, my job is in the way. I would do my assignment, but I can't do this assignment right now. I can't come right now because my job is in the way. This is more important to me than coming and supping with you. The last one, and I think is very interesting, Jesus had used this before. There was one says, you know, I have a wife. He didn't say he was a newlywed. He just acknowledged the fact he was a married man. And he said, I have a wife, so I can't come because I got a wife. He left it open-ended like that. So what the man did, according to the story Jesus told, he told the servant, he said, go out. Go back out there. Go into the highways and the hedges. Compel those that I didn't invite. Get all of those that otherwise wouldn't look like they qualified. Get the main, get the halt. Get those who look like they don't belong here, in other words. Have them come. Because those that I first invited, I won't invite them again. But bring these. Tell them to come. Let them know all things are ready. It gives us a unique insight into assignments. And really, it gives us a unique insight into how we feel about assignments. Because we see our assignment as merely something to do, we don't have the same compassion and the same passion about assignments as the person who has given it to us. God has given us assignments because there are certain things he wants to establish in the earth where that's important to him. And yet, we have to count up the cost before we say yes. It's not for us per se. It's not even about us. It's about the standard he wants to lift up. It's about the pattern he wants to set. You have been uniquely chosen. And just because you don't fulfill your assignment doesn't mean this assignment won't be fulfilled. There are those who may right now be less qualified, who may be less anointed in you, who may be less gifted in your eyes. But if God decides he wants to use them, he can use them and it will disqualify you. There's a cost factor. We're always going to have jobs. We're always going to have obligations. But how do these obligations fit with our assignment? Do they fit at all? Are you willing to reprioritize your life so that you can fulfill the assignment God has given you? Are you willing to adjust your attitude? Are you willing to make adjustments in your social circle? Are you willing to make the moves that you're so comfortable with in order to fulfill your assignment? Those are things we need to think about when we talk about fulfilling assignments. It's more than just merely something to do. God has honored you. God has called you out. God has ordained you. And God, most of all, has entrusted you with something very important and something very vital to building up his kingdom here on earth. God bless you, my saint. Think about that as you go this week. What is it that is interfering with you doing your assignment? God bless you, and I'll see you next week.